Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Mud, starring Matthew McConaughey, Ty Sheridan, Sam Shepard, Michael Shannon, Jacob Laughlin, and Reese Witherspoon, directed by Jeff Nichols. Now, I have seen this movie before in theaters, and I remember really enjoying it, but was it as good as I remember? Let's get into it. Ellis, played by Ty Sheridan, wakes up and gets out of his house, which is a lake of some kind, or no, it's a river, that's what it is, and sees his parents, Senior and Mary Lee, yes, one of them is named Senior, are having a discussion as he leaves the house to meet up with his friend Neckbone, played by Jacob Laughlin, and go around the river to an island where there's a boat and on the tree, and they try to take the boat, and when they leave, they see Mud, played by Matthew McConaughey, who actually owns the boat on the tree, and they have a conversation and ends it with a favor, which is getting him some more food to him. And remind me, why is a boat ever on a tree in the first place? But I went with it as an opener, and I really like the two boys we follow throughout the movie, and McConaughey's performance is very good in here as well. And their acting with each other is well done. Ellis gets back to Senior later than expected, and delivers some fish to many different clients, and the cinematography is well shot from start to finish all across town. And Ellis gets dropped off at Neckbone's house with his uncle Galen, played by Michael Shannon, is doing funny things which I won't explain in a PG-13 rated movie. Yes, this is PG-13. As Ellis gets a book from Neckbone, and Ellis is thinking of going back out there and to help Mud out, which is a good idea as Ellis gets home and hears Senior and Mary Lee having an argument of some kind, and he takes some food and the pantry to give to Mud, and the shots are great to watch. They get back to the island to see Mud and give him the food as they notice he has a pistol for protection reasons, as it's not meant for the boys, as Mud takes them somewhere in the middle of the island and brings up how snakes were put on the earth for everybody to fear, which makes sense and it is realistic, and the writing is very good, as the director from Jeff Nichols is well done. Ellis sees a girl named May Pearl being slapped in the booty and being harassed by a senior man named Tyler, as he comes off and he comes in and punches him out and introduces himself to May Pearl in the same parking lot as the Piggly Wiggly. But at the same time, Ellis and Neckbone see Mud's girlfriend Juniper, played by Reese Witherspoon, going into the Piggly Wiggly to do some grocery shopping and nighttime comes, and Ellis gets home past 7 p.m. for dinner time like he promised at one point earlier. Senior tells Ellis Mary Lee wants to live in the middle of town with Ellis, as she wants to divorce Senior. And it makes Ellis upset, and I know how that goes, as I've been there before, and I was around his age when, and the actors playing the parents of Roy McKinnon and Sarah Paulson, they are very good in here, and Reese Witherspoon also turns in some great work with this performance, but it's not as good as Walk the Line, in my opinion. I'll get there when I get there. Ellis meets with Mud in the island in the middle of the night, and Ellis is led to believe everybody who are in love stay in love, but the truth is, it doesn't always work like that, as he'll learn that much later in the movie, which is sad, but it's a beautiful story about life in the most realistic way possible. Mary Lee wakes up Ellis and takes him to Walmart and talks with Ellis about why she's getting divorced to begin with, until they get searched by some state troopers to look for Mud, as he's a wanted man, and calls Neckbone to go with him to the island, and they find him wondering what did he do, as he says he shot a man named Hutchins, and he talks about the story. I believe every word McConaughey says about the story of why he shot Hutchins. That was a smart idea for a so far powerful movie. Mud gives Ellis and Neckbone a list of things he needs to get out of the island, as he has no choice but to not give the boys the boat. And Ellis goes back to his neighborhood and has a message with Mud's old friend Tom, played by Sam Shepard, as he tells him Mud needs his help and takes him to the island along with Neckbone. And Mud and Tom have an argument about involving the two boys, and says he can't help him with his getting out of the town plan. And Sam Shepard is very good in this movie. Mud gives Ellis and Neckbone a task to get Juniper some messages about getting out of town plan his out-of-town plan, I should rephrase that, after dropping off Tom into the neighborhood. And the boys have an idea of selling some fish at the hotel, and they find Juniper screaming while she was attacked by a government agent, Carver, as he punches Ellis down and threatens Juniper. And without telling Carver, the boys say they have a message from Mud, and she seemed delighted to hear from Mud, and they'll tell her they'll be in touch and get out of there, while Carver watches them leave, and night comes and calls Maypearl and schedule their first date. And this movie is well done, in my opinion, as this is tightly paced at a 2-hour and 10-minute runtime. Ellis and Neckbone go to the back of the island to help Mud with his escape plan, starting off with getting the boat down from the trees. And nighttime comes, and Ellis goes to a bonfire with Maypearl and a lot of people around her, and he gives her a bracelet as she kisses him in the cheek, excuse me, and he asks her if she wants to be his girlfriend, and which is jumping too soon as far as a relationship is concerned. Like, I really like the relationship between Ellis, Neckbone, and Mud, as I get a sense that it was a real friendship from their first meet to the very end of the movie, and I'll get there when I get there. Meanwhile, Tom calls Ellis to his house across the river, and he asks Ellis if he's seen Mud and chat about why he did what he had to do. And that scene was gripping, as this movie is engaging me throughout thus far. Ellis comes back to the island and sees Mud got the boat down, and Ellis gives some stuff to Mud while Neckbone hangs out with Galen, and Ellis was senior, and they stop near where the government is at, as well as Carver, and they have a meeting to capture Mud as well as Juniper, as the man who was set out to kill Mud, named King, who, because of Mud killing his son Hutchins, who was brought up earlier, but by Mud, and that was an interesting callback from earlier in the film. Ellis calls Juniper and tells her they'll meet up tomorrow, while Maypearl straight up ignores Ellis, and Carver comes up to Ellis and Neckbone and is still looking for Mud, and they ride off, and I was heartbroken when Maypearl ignored Ellis, straight up, despite the fact he pushed it a little too soon. And the next day comes, and Juniper doesn't get out of the motel room she's staying in because she needed a bar to get a drink, and Ellis and Neckbone go in the bar and see Juniper, and the owner throws them out, and she's cheating on Mud, which is the hard way of life, and they give Mud the motor Tom gave him for a boat, I believing, and tells him the truth about Juniper, and I felt so bad at this point because she went out and cheated on his ass, which doesn't feel good in general. Ellis goes back home and wakes up the next day and tries to call Maypearl, as he gets interrupted by Senior yelling at him, saying he's ashamed of him because he's led to believe he stole the motor, and Mary Lee says to bring back in person and apologize to the person he took it from, and we move on to Ellis and Neckbone back on the island, and saw Mud was drunk last night before they find him and gave a shirt to Ellis, but he never takes it and gives him a message to Juniper, while Neckbone sticks around on the island to help out Mud, and Ellis goes back to the motel and gives Juniper a message he didn't read, as he's upset with her, and she tells him he's a liar, and she says the note saying it's over. And after Ellis hears it, she says she understands, and she cries about it after Ellis leaves, and he goes back to the island, as he's upset and sees Maypearl with another guy named Kyle and wonders why she didn't call him back. And she says she's not his girlfriend and says he loves her, and she walks away, and he's back at the island. And Mud at one point he punches Mud in the face and says he trusted Mud and used him as a thief, and walks away until Ellis is stuck on a hole of water with snakes in it. And Mud and Neckbone take Ellis to the hospital, and Mud leaves Ellis there as he runs off and the hospital calls the cops because they saw they see Juniper, and they wave at each other, or Mud does, I'll say, and we move on to Ellis waking up at home in his bed, and his parents surprise him in his bedroom as he's comforted with him by their side, and Mud says his goodbyes to Neckbone as he gives him the gun with no bullets, which it was the deal, but he didn't say anything about no bullets, because come on, a kid with a gun isn't safe at all. And he goes to Ellis's place to say his goodbyes to Ellis, and he says he loved Juniper as well as Ellis is a good man, while the agents are outside the house in the river and they have a shootout as Tom snipers at the government agents. And it ends with Mudd jumping in the river, and the audience doesn't know whether he lived or died, and it kept making me guess. And Carver is killed, but luckily Ellis, Neckbone Sr., and Mary Lee survived the shootout, as well as Tom, and the audience doesn't know what happened to him either until a couple of minutes later. We move on to Ellis and Neckbone having one last chat about how the law is BS until Senior takes Ellis to Mary Lee's own apartment as she has the custody of Ellis, but he visits as he arrives at Mary Lee's place and he almost walks in. He sees Maypearl and their neighbors, and we see Tom driving the boat with Mudd, who happens to be alive, and see the river together, and the climax was very solid to a very solid movie in my opinion. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.6 out of 10. The performances are very good, from the two kids to Reese Witherspoon to even Matthew McConaughey, as they're all very good in this movie, and the cinematography is well shot, and there's some great shots from start to finish. The writing is good, as the directing by Jeff Nichols which was well done, and he has some talent for some great shots and beautiful stories about life in the most realistic way possible, and it has smart ideas for a powerful film, and the editing is tightly paced at a 2 hour and 10-minute runtime, and this movie is well as done in my opinion. This is a very good movie with the smart life choices, and that is something I admire from director Jeff Nichols, and it's very well told, and this is a solid movie and a solid recommendation, and I love the relationship between Ellis, Neckbone, and Mudd, as it works tremendously. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Loving, and until then, I need to take the boy to a hospital because this is my Matthew McConaughey impression. Not doing it any better.